Alright, so one day stumbled across an article about a man named Bernard Noble. He's 49 years old and a dad to 7. He's serving 13 years in prison without parole for when he was caught with what was equivalent to 2 joints of marijuana. And prior to this, he had 7 other convictions, all of small amounts of drugs, all non-violent crimes though. And then right under this story, they happen to tell about a Lamarcus Bassett, a 19-year-old kid who shot at 4 people, killing 2 of them. And he is serving 8 years in prison for that. So if you look at these 2 stories compared to each other, you see a man who has not really done anything to hurt anybody in our society, serving 13 years. And then you have a man who's not only taken 2 lives, but torn apart families and whatnot. And he's getting 5 years less than that man. So this is why I believe marijuana should be legal for recreational use for anyone over the age of 21. By doing this, we can save a lot of money in prohibition in our law enforcement that we spend every year just on marijuana. And also, police officers themselves are getting tired of prohibition, and they're starting to notice these people aren't really what's hurting our society, and they're not really the people we need to be going after. And then I'll talk about it compared to tobacco and alcohol, which are legal substances in America. So first, the money. We spend $8.7 billion in 2013 just on prohibition of marijuana. That doesn't include any other drugs that are illegal. That's just what we spent on marijuana for like law enforcement, advertising, and whatnot. And then Washington legalized recreational marijuana a couple years ago. And in their first year of sales, they made $500 million off tax revenue. So this shows we're not only saving money, but we're also bringing in money for the state by legalizing it. And this money can be put towards things like education, which the states like Washington and Colorado have been doing, and also roadways and whatnot. And then the police officers who have been saying they're getting tired of this and whatnot, there was a quote from Stephen Downing, the Los Angeles former deputy chief of police. He said, "When we ended the prohibition of alcohol, Al Capone was out of work the next day. Our drug policy is really anti-public safety and pro-cartel, pro-street gang, because it keeps them in business." So therefore, he's basically saying, if we legalize this, we won't see these people. Granted, there will still be crimes going on in our streets, but it might help drop the violence a little bit, and maybe like when you're going to make a drug deal, drug dealer decides to try to rob you and kill you. You won't have these problems when you have businesses running and operating. And then let's look at it compared to tobacco and alcohol. So I've told you about marijuana's health benefits and whatnot. Now let's look at alcohol and tobacco. And we all know alcohol. If you've been to a party, you might have seen someone drink a little too much and become violent and want to hurt people. This tends to happen a lot with alcohol, and can really hurt families and whatnot. And with marijuana, you don't tend to see these type of reactions happen when using a substance. People tend to be more calm and whatnot, not violent. And then cigarettes. While marijuana doesn't trace back to lung cancer, or hasn't been found to yet, 9 out of 10 people diagnosed with lung cancer has happened from the use of cigarettes. So not only are cigarettes harmful, they're becoming even more harmful because they're trying to put flavors and make them sell better and more attractive to the people. And according to the CDC, which stands for Center of Disease Control and Prevention, 480,000 people die every year from smoking cigarettes, while 16 million live with a disease due to it. And 88,000 Americans die every year from alcohol or related causes, while 0 have died from marijuana, but many have died from laced marijuana in our streets. And then a study from National Center for Biotechnology Information studied 7 drugs and listed them in order from deadliest to least deadliest. And I'll share with you what they had to say. Their order was alcohol, then heroin, cocaine, tobacco, ecstasy, methamphetamines, and then marijuana. So as you can see, they put alcohol at the very top of the most deadliest substances, and then marijuana fell to the least. So why do we have 2 substances legal that are more deadly to us than one that is not? And then, so by looking at this, we notice we could save a lot of money and put it towards more beneficial things for our economy. And also, why are we going against what police officers are out there every day and know what crimes need to be stopped? And if they don't think marijuana is that big a deal, why are we focusing on it? And also, if you look at it compared to what we have legalized now, what's the big deal? So I want you to look at the presidential candidates, because there are some that believe prohibition needs to be stopped because it's doing more harm to our society than good. So by looking at presidential candidates and making others aware, we can make marijuana legal and put an end to prohibition.
Okay, so like there's a legal driving limit for alcohol on Hawaii. Would there be like a certain limit? How would they test that?
Right. So with that, it's a little stickier because you don't really have a way to test it. Like drug testing, they can't really do that because that shows from past weeks too. So you can't really say. It's more if an officer pulls you over and you have signs of being under impairment or whatnot, then
So like you wouldn't be able to drive at all.
yeah, if you get pulled over and you're high behind the wheel, then you're going to jail.
If it is legal.
Yeah, even if it's legal. Zach?
Like you just said, I mean, alcohol doesn't stay in your system very long, but marijuana stays in it a lot longer. Do you think that's more harmful since it's in your body longer?
Well, alcohol, they both have their effects, and their effects last for a certain period of time. It just happens to stay in your bloodstream longer and in their system, but it won't it doesn't affect you while it's in your system the whole time.
You said it should be legal for people over 21, but how many people under 21 are in jail for drugs versus over 21? You would think that more kids would be.
Yes, there are a lot of kids in jail for marijuana, but also a lot are able to just go to a counselor or something and see them and get help for it, which decreases the amount of kids that go to jail for it. But there's also a lot of adults that will go to jail for marijuana every year. So
What's like Indiana's stance on those governments?
Indiana, I really don't know their stance on it, but I know we're like there's not very many states left now that don't have either recreational or medicinal legalized, but we're one of those states that have neither of those legalized. We're decriminalized even.
Do you think that choosing to smoke marijuana could affect your future employment? Because if they give you a drug test and they see, okay, they have marijuana in their system, do you think that they would be less likely to hire a person even if it's legal?
Well, if it's legal, I don't think drug testing is necessarily, in that case, you have people that drink and you'll hire the people that drink, correct? So, it just depends on your stance necessarily, and I guess the boss's view on it. Zach?
Why do you think alcohol and tobacco have been legal for so many years and marijuana hasn't?
I think one big thing is they don't really know how they'll regulate it necessarily, and that's probably the most sticky issue with it.
Kind of similar to the question I was going to ask. So you mentioned your idea is that we could release a lot of money, we wouldn't be spending a lot of money. So that seems to be convincing enough, but obviously it's not convincing enough to the country.
Yeah.
So what can be convincing enough to us to get this
Well,
change to happen?
I think also a lot of people don't even know how much money we're actually spending on this prohibition and whatnot, so just maybe even to tell people how much we're actually spending on prohibition of just marijuana and letting people know, like, this money could be going towards things that could further our country more and not trying to stop something that isn't really doing that much harm to us.
Makes sense. Alright, good job.